Welcome to the Throttle Up Leadership Podcast. Our theme for 2025 is the future of work. Meaning is the new money. In a world shaped by rapid innovation and constant change, the pursuit of purpose and impact has never been more important. I'm Dr. John D'Antico, your host, bringing over 30 years of experience in leadership, strategic thinking, and purpose-driven innovation. Here, we tackle the pressing challenges of our time, from the rise of artificial intelligence to the growing need for meaning in the workplace. Together, we'll uncover how leaders can ethically integrate AI to enhance decision-making and keep humanity at the heart of their organizations. Remember, amidst all the technological advancements, in the end, it's always about the people. This podcast is your resource for actionable tools, thought-provoking discussions, and inspiring stories. It's time to go beyond leadership development and focus on leadership impact, creating workplaces where people thrive, innovation flourishes, and meaning truly becomes the new currency. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Now, let's throttle up and dive into today's episode.
Hello again and welcome to the Throttle Up Leadership Podcast. It's me, Dr. John D'Antico. With me this morning is Kyle Patrick Smith, the CEO and founder of HR Kyle Services, a consulting firm based in Cuyahoga Falls, Ohio, redefining how organizations think about talent, from recruitment to retention. With over 25 years of corporate HR experience, Kyle brings a rich blend of strategic insight, operational know-how, and community commitment to every conversation. He's also the Amazon best-selling author, a respected voice on several nonprofit and workforce development boards across the country, and a champion for aligning people, purpose, and performance. At HR Kyle Services, Kyle and his team help businesses build resilient, high-impact workforces while staying grounded in core values like intentionality, respect, collaboration, and community service. In a world where people first has become a buzzword, Kyle's mission is to bring that phrase back to life with real strategies, real action, and real results. And I'm truly pleased and delighted to have him here with me this morning. Good morning, Kyle. How are you?
Morning, John. Great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Great to have you here. I'm so very interested in the whole talent market. People are my number one business, as I like to say.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure that reverberates with you as well. So, Kyle, let me begin by asking you this question. Tell me a little bit about yourself. Where did you grow up, and what, in your mind, were some of the influences in your early life?
John, I'm a small town guy, and most of my upbringing, in fact, all of it, what you might call disadvantaged. So I have a history of going to a lot of different schools, and we moved a lot of times, and we probably averaged one new living situation per year, at least, from the time that I was 18. Ironically, I've lived in the same house now for 21 years. It'll be 21 years at the end of this month. So tried to change some of that tide, but definitely came from a less privileged background. College wasn't something that was really talked about or considered for me. My dad didn't finish the 11th grade. His dad and his parents didn't get out of the 3rd and 4th grade. So come from a very different type of background. But in my mind, I knew that education would be valuable, and that's what I pursued early in my adult life. In between working full-time, I went to school full-time. Eventually landed on this profession called human resources. I spent 25, almost 26 years of my adult life in corporate HR roles. The last 23, I was in the senior HR role for several different companies. About a year ago, I knew that I didn't want to work for anybody else anymore. I didn't like a lot of the things I was seeing in the workplace and what I was experiencing, and it'll relate to some of what we'll talk about today. I decided to form this business called HR Kyle. And it is centered on people and putting people first, and not just having that in a tagline or something that we know is the right thing to say. It's a vision and a mission that we live every day.
That's great. I was telling a colleague the other day, in this world of AI, I think people feel like they're being run over by AI. It's so much the hype and all of that. Yet at the bottom line, it's always about the people. When all is said and done, it's always about the people. Tell me about obviously, as an Amazon bestseller, you wrote a book, obviously.
Yeah.
And could you tell me a little bit about your book?
Well, I wrote actually 2 books, and it comes at this whole topic of job searching and talent acquisition from both sides. One of them is get the job you love. And of course, that's written from the job seeker perspective. And it says, hey, take a step back. Before you just dive into that next role that you think is the right fit for you, take a step back and say, what do I really want to do with my life? What do I get satisfaction from on a daily basis in the job that I do? And go through this analysis and take it down to the granular level from a company perspective as well. What kind of company do I want to work for? What do they stand for? And once you've gone through that analysis, you can undertake that job search. The book itself takes you through all the steps in undertaking that job search and being effective with it. So it's the resume, it's the LinkedIn profile, it's the cover letter, it's the interviews, it's salary negotiation. It's all of those things that happen with securing a job. And then I added a few more chapters at the end to say, okay, now that you've gotten this job, how do you continue this positive momentum in your career? So that's get the job you love. Then I said, my recruiting friends need some help as well. So I wrote a book called Recruiting is Easy, and it hits exactly on the theme that you and I are talking about today. It says, too often we've taken the most important part out of the process as it relates to recruiting, and that's the candidate. So it presents this process that I've written based upon real experience. This isn't something where I sat down for several months and did some research on what recruiting could really look like. And these are practices that I gleaned, that I honed, that I developed to be very effective at recruiting over my 25-year career. And it does center on people. And it says the most important person in that process, whether it's hiring, recruiting, talent acquisition, are the people around you, whether it's the candidates, the hiring managers, your community partners. Keep people at the center of it and use your other things as support, your AI or whatever it is. Those are supports, but ultimately people are at the center of it. So that's the crux of recruiting. I find that there's a lot of radical concepts in there. I'll throw a couple out to you. One, it says, it's never no, it's not right now. What I mean by that is when I'm considering a candidate for a position, it's never a case of where, okay, John, I'm sorry, we're going to move forward with other candidates. And then John's forgotten. It's John, we don't believe that you're the right fit for this role. However, I really like your background. Let's stay in contact. My record so far is 7 years between meeting a candidate and eventually hiring them. Because the other thing that I always say is once you and I are connected, we're kind of stuck with each other. And that means we're going to keep track of each other. We're going to continue to network and so on. So it's principles like that built into your recruiting that make it very easy. Because once I've interviewed John once, I really don't need to interview him again. I know who he is and what he's about. We keep in contact, and then over time, we find roles that make more sense for John. And the other thing that we do is we build advocates like John into our hiring process as well. So John now says, God, that company that Kyle works for, they're a really good company. Hey, so-and-so, why don't you apply there? So we're building that kind of momentum as well. And John, as you can see, I could talk for hours just about that book, but I hope that's a good summary of what those 2 books look like.
No, that was great. I appreciate that very much. What comes to mind is conversations that I've had with other folks in the HR world. A guy by the name of Stephen Kopshaw. I'll tell you a little bit about Stephen. He is in the health-related fields. And in our conversation, he says, I want to pour everything I can into my employee. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, why do you want to do that? He said, because even if he leaves me, he's going to go someplace else and do well there. What he made me reflect on, and I'd love to get your reflection on this, is feeding the HR ecosystem, if you will, around not just, hey, look, we don't have a job for you. You're building an ecosystem here of people who may not be right for the job today, but 6-7 months from now, they may be right. I'd love to get your reflection on that.
Well, I'll go even further. 2, 6, 7 years from now, they may be the right fit. And this is not a joke or an exaggeration. I hear from several people every week who said, so-and-so referred me to you because of the experience that they had with you. I put a posting up earlier this week about that, where this person was told, hey, Kyle doesn't look at recruiting as transactional. Kyle looks to build relationships. He looks to create a fit between the person and the company. There aren't a lot of recruiting firms that are doing that. They try to throw as many candidates as possible to roll and hope one of them sticks. We nurture our relationships so when an opening comes open, we go into our virtual database and literal database and say, who are the 3 to 5 candidates that would be a wonderful fit for this role based upon what we know about this organization? We're not sharing a lot of candidates with companies, but what we tell them is you could hire any one of these candidates that we're sharing and you'd be happy with them. So to your point, I've leveraged a whole business around this to where do we go to some events to meet people? Of course we do. We do some networking, but I get a ton of networking from people who have talked about what we do here to someone else. And they say, God, I'd love to be treated that way, because what we're doing, John, is the exception, not the rule.
Yeah, very interesting.
Yeah.
The other thing I want to bring up now, because you just kind of piqued my thought process here, is I was at a presentation not too long ago, and we had a person there from workforce development, from the HR workforce development side. I got this feeling we were talking about HR and AI as it affects HR.
Mm-hmm.
And what I got from it was that HR not only is going to revolutionize AI
Yeah.
is going to revolutionize HR, but it basically will take all the guesswork out, in the sense that, the metaphor I use is a baseball diamond.
Mm-hmm.
The AI solutions are going to bring you home. And I'm just not buying it. I think AI will get you maybe to second base, but it may bring you home and score the run. I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
No, thank you for sharing that. To hear that description, my initial reaction, because I do a talk on AI in HR, is that's a very irresponsible viewpoint. Because ultimately, these AI systems are built by people. And as we all know, people are flawed. Okay? And there's plenty of examples in our world now to where some form of artificial intelligence has failed us. We've seen that with automobiles that are autonomous, and we've seen accidents with those. So my first reaction is that's a horribly irresponsible statement to make. I would agree with you. I think it's another tool, like we've seen so many tools come along. I'm old enough in this HR profession to remember when online recruiting, that's the answer. It will make it so much easier to recruit. I was on the forefront of that. I literally wrote a book on online recruiting for the organization that I worked with. It was not the answer. It was another tool to make it easier to get candidates and manage them and so on. AI is the same way. And again, there's plenty of flaws. It concerns me a great deal to hear someone describe it like that. Because one thing that I talk about a great deal is AI especially needs audits. It needs checks. It needs the human oversight. What AI is designed to do is the same thing that the automobile did when it replaced horse and buggy. It made it more efficient to get around. It made it quicker. It made it easier. But it wasn't the be-all, end-all. And to me, that's where AI is. It's still that tool that can make us more efficient, make us better. And I'll tell you one where it can make us really good, because we're horrible at it as an HR profession, communicating with our candidates. Now we've got a tool that if we program it right, we can keep in contact with our candidates and let them know their status and what's going on and answer some of those basic questions. So my hope is something very simple that I think is getting overlooked. How about just build that AI so we keep better communication with our candidates? Let's just start there rather than saying it's going to rule the world, because right now we're horrible at that.
I appreciate that very much. Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, in the end, it's always about the people. I'll tell you a funny story. A few weeks ago, I read a story about a woman. I think this is an ironic story. A woman who was teaching other people how to get past the AI screening software. If you know where I'm going with this.
Yep.
Okay, here's how you use Google Gemini to get past the AI resume screening software.
Yep.
Of course, the organizations are somewhat aghast at this. Well, you
Yep.
mean you can actually use AI to fool our system? What is that all about?
Using AI against itself.
That's right. So here's the irony.
Oh my gosh.
As I read this article, what came to the fore was, wait a minute, we need to be able to hack the AI that's trying to get this candidate to us. I call it a hack.
Yep.
So you know what we have to do, the organization said? We may have to hold more personal interviews.
Wow, what a concept. Who would have thought, right, John?
I was overwhelmed by it all. You know what I mean?
That's so revolutionary. Imagine
It's
they're going to
just
have to do
cool.
face-to-face interviews.
Who knew? We'd have to actually talk to people, maybe on a Zoom,
Yeah.
provided, of course, and this is something I've learned, people are not using filters on their Zoom
Oh my
to
gosh.
portray a different perspective about themselves. I thought that was so interesting, which goes to your point.
Yeah.
It's really about the people
Yeah.
and the chemistry. Let me use this example as a jumping off point for
Yeah.
another point I'd love to get your reflection on. I've been very, very blessed with the wonderful number and quality of guests I've had on this podcast. Just
Yeah.
overwhelming.
That meant a
They've
lot to me to hear
changed.
you say that.
Yeah, it changed me. It shifted a lot of my thinking. So much so that now what I talk about is, what do you really look for when you're hiring a person? What is right there in the middle? For me, it's higher on values, higher heart. And what I mean by heart is perseverance. Have you been through a tough time? Have you trudged along with the belief that eventually one day the fog will clear and you'll come to a sunny day, so to speak? I've talked to people, three of whom were in prison, who are now leaders in their respective industries:
Yep.
healthcare, financial planning, and AI. One person, Ken, told me, I went to jail 3 times.
Mhm.
The first 2 times didn't stick, but he persevered, took responsibility for his life.
Yeah.
No one of these, and there were 7 or 8 that I can think of, never said, I'm a victim here. The people are victimizing me. They just stood up, took responsibility, and move on. So
Yeah.
the notion I'd like to put on the table for you is higher for values, higher for heart.
Oh my
Reflection on that.
gosh, John, we're going to have a whole other episode on this one. You've touched a point with me, and this is where you and I are a little bit of kindred spirits. I think it comes from experience, but a special kind of experience, and that is going into situations that are curious. And just in the little time that we've spent, that's exactly who you are. That's who I am. I like to go into situations curious about the person, who they are, what they're about, and I can tell that's what you do. It's amazing how it opens your eyes. And something else that you shared about speaking with people around the world, it gives you a whole different perspective. And I can tell from you, because it's had the effect on me, I find that I'm much more understanding, tolerant, empathetic. You mentioned about the person that's made mistakes several times. One of the things that I build into my hiring process, especially later, was second chance hiring. The individual has been incarcerated. They've had some sort of an issue, and they're fighting to overcome it, and giving them that second or sometimes third chance because they've demonstrated that they deserve it. So that hits a chord with me. The other thing too that I do now, and I've been doing this for a few years as well, and I tell candidates this: I don't interview. I stopped interviewing a long time ago. We're not going to sit here and go through questions. You and I are going to sit here and have a conversation. We're going to get to know each other a little better. And I want you to feel comfortable to share things about yourself and who you are and what you stand for. I'll do the same. And I think it speaks exactly to what you're saying. When you have that kind of conversation versus an interview, you get to the heart of who the person is. Ultimately, that's what we're looking to accomplish in hiring. And the proof of it is, or at least one example, one person that I'm working with in our organization, she's currently in a role where she's responsible for onboarding. And one of the things she said is, one thing I love about onboarding is you really get to know the candidate. I said, exactly. Interviewing and recruiting needs to look like onboarding, to where we really get to know the candidate, because you and I both know, John, someone can be a wonderful interviewer and they're not a good employee. I'm not hiring somebody for interviewing. I'm hiring somebody to be an employee. So I want to have conversations about what they would be like as an employee. And again, it ties right back to what you're saying. What's their story? What's their story of resilience and overcoming things? Oh, there was a gap in their employment history. What is that about? Talk to me. What's the story behind that? And one of my first lines in every interview is, John, I've got your resume here. I can see the dates and the companies and all this. But what I really want to know is, what's the story behind the resume? Tell me that. And that's how we start the conversation. And you're exactly right. It gets to the heart of the person versus this pre-scripted message. And the beauty of that too is you can't overcome that with AI. AI is not going to be able to answer that question. Only the individual can tell their story.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. One of the things about perseverance is, when you get to the heart of the person, you figure out very quickly that this person can solve problems,
Yes.
because that's what they did in their lives. They solved their problem. And they're not deterred by a difficult, complex situation. They may take a step back and carefully move forward, but they know how to do that. I think in many cases they can bring people along. I
Oh
remember
my.
one of the lessons I learned as a young naval officer was, you know, I don't, give me the person that has the right attitude.
Yep.
I can train him to do anything. If you've got the right attitude, the continuous learning, that's part of it. I will learn. I will do what I have to do to be better. That's a source of power that can't be deterred.
Yep.
And so, any thoughts on that? I'd love to hear
I'll
from
tell you
you.
what, I put out a posting recently because we're looking to add some talent here. One of the things I put in it was, I'm looking for people that don't have all the answers. I think it speaks to exactly what you're saying, because I don't have all the answers, but I'm willing to bring together smart, talented, motivated, and driven people. And as a team, we can come to the answers. But if you're a person that wants to join this organization, you got everything already figured out, then this isn't going to be a good fit for you, because I know that's not realistic. But to your point, if you're a person that's smart and resilient and determined, and they're used to overcoming hurdles, because that's what being an entrepreneur and being in business for yourself, that's what it's all about. If you've done that before, and you and I know this, the best predictor of future performance is past performance in the same or a similar situation. So to your point, if you have a history of overcoming challenges and having setbacks and not being defeated by that, guess what? The next time you encounter the same or a similar situation, you're going to do exactly the same thing. And it makes me think of a significant group of our clients, especially on the candidate side for our internship program, our international students. And I love our international students. These young men and young ladies have traveled halfway around the world to this strange place where English isn't their first language. They may not know anybody here, and they've come here and sat down roots in a foreign country and have been successful with it. That I know they're going to follow through on everything that we ask them to do. When we put them on an assignment, we know they're going to do well. To your point, they're going to take direction. They're going to be easy to supervise, easy to train. They're going to show up for meetings. When they make a promise to us, they always follow through. And that's just what we know, to your point, when we know about who they are and what they've gone through.
Yeah, I agree. I published a newsletter on LinkedIn that talks about the need for leaders and organizations to embrace doubt and ambiguity because you don't have all the answers. And what people don't understand is when you embrace doubt and ambiguity, you kick the door open to collaboration
Bingo.
because people go, I don't know. Do you know the answer? No, I don't. Well, let's get our folks together and see if we can figure out a pathway through this that
Bingo.
allows them to be part of the decision-making process. One of the most important requirements today for the multi-generational workforce. They want to matter. They want their work to matter. So they want to be involved in the decision-making processes. Any reflection on that idea?
Well, and here's the irony of everything we're talking about. By doing this, you create a much more engaged workforce. People are excited to come to work. They're excited to say, point to something and say, you know what, I had something to do with that, even if it's a small part. And that's how you foster this engagement. The beauty of it is, once you start creating this environment, it's amazing what happens, because all of a sudden, these same individuals are looking around saying, what else can we improve around here? What else can I provide? They become extraordinarily self-motivated. I talk about this in one of the talks that I give, and eventually when I have some time, I'm going to write a book on this. It's called the 95% rule. And it's all about leading organizations around policies, procedures, and practices that say most people want to come into work, do their best, give their best effort, and contribute and make a good living, go home to their families safely at night, and so on. And that's exactly what you and I are speaking to. We want to lead the 95% of people who are just dying to share their ideas and to be a part of something and to say, yeah, I had a little something to do with that. That's what this is about. And ultimately, it makes our jobs as leaders so much easier. I don't want to be anybody's boss. I'm very averse to that term boss. Now, I'm happy to be your coach, your mentor, get roadblocks out of the way, get you signed up for training. I'm happy to do that. But I don't want to have to boss anybody. If I got to do that, this is not the place for me or for you.
I agree. In fact, one of the things I'm talking about in my new perspective, my new venture, and that's this throttle up operating system, leadership operating system.
Yep.
You talk about the 95%. And the metaphor I use is the difference between the leader as a lighthouse, one person lighting the way in troubled waters, as opposed to the constellation of stars above. This notion that, you know what, we can gain much better perspective about where we are by using a multitude of stars, each one not having a higher weight than the other, as long as we can identify them. And believe me, I've been out there looking at them. But and they are hard to do. Sometimes it's hard to do. But if you can use the constellation of stars and embed this notion of leadership with empathy and authenticity, not in just one person, the leader, but within the system of leadership inside that group or organization. When the leader leaves, things continue to progress. And that's a company that I believe has the resiliency to continue on. Any thoughts?
Oh my gosh, I could go in a lot of different directions with this. This is one of the things, and I don't want to make this seem like it's a gimmick or whatever, but I'm talking with a couple of people about joining an organization. With one of them, we've gotten a little further along. I scheduled a meeting with her last week and purposely didn't send out a meeting notice because I wanted to see how she would handle that. You know, this didn't get sent. What would be her attitude about it? Would she follow through? All of these things. And I think it points to what you're saying, because I got to bring people on here that can manage themselves, because I'm here as the CEO. If I needed to do all these other things, I wouldn't have to have other people. So I think that's the first thing. The connection to what you said really relates to something we talked about a little bit ago, and that's this whole AI phenomenon. And I think your analogy is a beautiful thing because you can visualize that in your mind. Well, we're looking to AI to be now that, oh my gosh, what was the term you just used? You called it
lighthouse.
A lighthouse. Yeah, we're looking for AI to be the lighthouse, which it really should just be one of those stars that are in the universe. Here's AI, here's my teammates, here's this technology. It's the same way. But again, you're right. The irony about what we're talking about, John, is as I've had individuals join this organization, one thing I've quite had to coach them on is I'm not going to be their boss. I'm not going to be their keeper and keep an eye on them. They need to take ownership of that. And for a lot of people, that's a change. Some people struggle with that. They've been conditioned for that. In high school, that was what schooling looked like. They got out of school and they started working. That's what work looked like. They have this long history of, 20, 30 years of having someone come over. So this is a change. This is now you need to manage yourself. I'll give you the direction as far as what your work entails and where it fits in here, but ultimately you need to run with it. And quite a few people need coaching on what that should look like because it's so radically different.
I absolutely agree.
Yeah.
And I think it is conditioning. There's a hesitancy for a lot of people to want to step out, thinking they may get punished or pushed back. But eventually, when their values align with the company values and vice versa, and they get a taste of what it's like to have a real sense of meaning in their life, that they're full-on contributor, And the third part, I'll just tell you, the third part of the big three, as I call them, is that people want training and learning that develops them.
Yes.
And what are we doing for them in terms of bringing them along? You could talk about college education, but there are so many different things out there, credentials, certifications, and certain things that add quickly to an organization's capability. In fact, I think it was Dan Fricker, who's an HR AI futurist.
Yep.
Dan and I were talking about this credentialing perspective. He said, John, we can't wait 4 years. Things have changed. Mm-hmm. And I said, you're right, Dan. He said, so what we're looking at is, can you get to a community college and get us a 14-week credential and take that core of knowledge and then expand it into the organization? So it's very interesting to see how all of these are coming together here and defining the future of the capability of HR and AI to work together. Go ahead and take it.
Yeah, I'll tell you. And what I'm loving that I'm seeing is there's so much less formality around this. We talked offline about something that you're building for Udemy, for example. The fact that now you're going to build something that people who want to learn that skill, let me work on that now whenever I want to. Maybe I wake up during the middle of the night and I'm like, okay, I want to spend an hour on what Dr. John created here. The accessibility now to these tools under so much less formality. It's online. If you want it to be in person, it can be in person. We're taking a vacation in a week. We're gonna work when we're on vacation. We're gonna be on the beach. We're gonna have all the tools we need so I can sit in the sun and still get things done. We live in a beautiful world where that didn't always exist. Thankfully, we have evolved in the work world to realize that it's not just about 4-year degrees or master's degrees. And I got those things, so I'm not going to downplay that because they served a purpose for me. But I also know that there's certain parts of my world, even in HR or my team, course in something. Maybe it's compensation, maybe it's some benefits. If I want to get them up to speed on certain things, I can send them to a course. We've built that into our work as well. And I did that when I was in corporate America. I built a supervisor training series. And it was all about different modules that we had. And over a year's time, our supervisors would get all of this training that they needed, but they would leave every session with something that they could immediately put in practice. And again, you and I both know, having been in the work world long enough, that's a huge shift from even where we were 5-10 years ago. It was, your option was, okay, you're working now, maybe we can get you into an executive MBA program, or maybe we can send you here. But it's still 1 to 2 years that you're sitting in a classroom going through this. That's not our world now. Dr. John can create a course that someone can access online, take for a period of time, maybe it's a few weeks, and now they have that skill that they can immediately put into practice. After every lesson, you've given them something they can put into practice. That's radical compared to where we were just a few years ago.
Absolutely. Well, I hope it's radical enough to attract people to go through the course, but we'll see what happens. We're getting close to the end here. I'd like to ask you this ending question, if that's okay with you. The future of HR in this tumultuous world of rapid, complex change, so many things impacting on it, the after effect of COVID, where people are no longer just looking for a paycheck, the complexity of AI and what it's bringing to us, and weeding through the hype to what really matters. And the third thing is loss of trust in institutions, as well as being something that, provides foundation for people to stand on. All these impacting all at once. Where do you see the future of HR talent and work in the future, if you will?
I think the successful organizations are the ones that are going to appreciate that we must be aligned with the total person. What I mean by that is the successful organizations are going to realize that it's more than just coming in, doing a job, and getting a paycheck. It's those benefits. It's those other things that are unique to each person, and being able to meet those needs and be flexible enough to do that. And realize too that employees have a life cycle, and sometimes that life cycle doesn't include us, but that doesn't mean that they're not still part of us. So we use the term former employee. Let's call them alumni, because they're still an advocate for us, or they're still a champion for what we do. Yep.
That's a great thought.
Again, the successful organizations will appreciate that it's about the whole person and not just I'm in that person's employee 1496.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think you're spot on here. In the end, it's always about the people. And if AI is here to enhance the human experience, great.
Yep.
I use it. It's helped me greatly. I call it my articulation engine, in the sense that I have the basic ideas. I want to do something here.
Yep.
I may be struggling with the words, trying to find the words that really articulate my thoughts. It helps me do that. I appreciate it very much. Kyle, this has been an absolute delight. You've done an absolutely stupendous job, and I appreciate it very much. I can't thank you enough for your time today here on the Throttle Up Leadership Podcast. I wish you every success in the future. Thank you so very much for your time.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been my pleasure. I've enjoyed it, enjoyed the dialogue, and just the intellectual acrobatics we did here a little bit. That was a lot of fun.
Thanks so much.